Hi, Lou here, and I'm going to talk about products as opposed to games in the game industry. And I'll start with a quote from Rob Fahey, who is an editorial writer for gamesindustry.biz, and I think one of the most perceptive commenters and one of the best writers in the video game industry. He says, "You have to build products for the consumers you have, not for the consumers you wish you had." Of course, he was talking about video games, but it applies to tabletop games as well. And I'll combine that with a speaker at Proto ATL that I went to last year, who was a publisher who talked about making a product, not a game. And clearly to him, the product was much more important than the game. In fact, he signed one game sight unseen just from the title because he felt the title would be so good for marketing purposes. So what do these people mean? They mean a game is a product, not just a game. People are interested in the look of the game. People are interested in the feel of the game, in the case of tabletop games. People are interested in a lot of things around the game that are not part of the game. That's one reason why you get some really poor games that do well on Kickstarter, because people are supporting the Kickstarter on the basis of what they're told about the game without having the opportunity to play the game itself, of course. Now, that means to me that games need to have 3D pieces. It's difficult to sell a game that doesn't have 3D pieces, although if it's to a certain market, the wargame ghetto market more or less, then you may succeed as long as you have nice big pieces, not the little half-inch pieces that used to be common. So plastic pieces are just about necessary, and that's what convinced me that in this new issue of Britannia that's coming out this summer, there are plastic pieces rather than cardboard pieces. Even though I thought the Fantasy Flight Games cardboard pieces were really nice, it's just that people want to see the 3D pieces. I was once told by Andy Lewis, who's the acquisitions guy for GMT, who published lots and lots of war games, or more or less war games, that Command and Colors, which has become a very popular series of games, was getting no traction in playtesting when it used flat pieces. When they decided to use blocks, and this is not blocks for hidden identity, it's just blocks to have a 3D piece, then it took off. And it's had 3D pieces ever since, and the latest versions have plastic pieces. That's product, not gameplay. The gameplay was exactly the same. It may have been a little bit easier to manipulate the blocks rather than flat pieces, but the game was essentially the same. The title of a game is very important, and the story is very important. Marketing uses the story. If you go look at games in a game shop, you pick up the box and turn it over, and they'll tell you the story of the game and not much about how the game actually plays. And that's true even though some Euro games have a story that's tacked on and actually has nothing to do with how the game plays. Nonetheless, the game is sold on the basis of the story. And that's why publishers tell me that it's hard to sell abstract games because there's not a story. One of my best games, Law and Chaos, was accepted by Mayfair, and I got a substantial advance, and they had it for 8 years, and then Mayfair went away and it was not published because it's an abstract game. I made up a sort of BS story for it, but still, it's an abstract game. And without a good story, these games are hard to sell. Chess would fall flat on its face if it were issued today and had not existed for 1,000 years. It's very complicated. There are far too many draws. You can say other things about it. But it's also an abstract game in a world where abstract doesn't go over very well. So this has gone on long enough that I need to say, what you need to do as a game designer is think about your product, not your game. You can have a game that plays really well, but you won't sell it because it's not a good product. You can have a game that's pretty much a pile of shit, like exploding kittens, but if you make it a good product, it'll sell. Thanks for listening.